I'm Nate.
And I am Joey.
And we just watched Five Nights at Freddy's.
We did.
Here's what we think. Five Nights at Freddy's is the latest Blumhouse release. It is directed by Emma Tammy, who in the past has directed The Wind, Blood Moon, and Delivered. The movie is inspired by Five Nights at Freddy's, the video game series of the same name, which became a very huge cultural hit in the mid-2010s, and I definitely have a lot of nostalgia for this series as a whole.
Me, on the other hand, I have no nostalgia for this. I barely played any of the Five Nights at Freddy's games except for the first one. So I came into this movie like complete blank slate, and I was actually looking forward to it because the last Blumhouse review you may have seen on our channel was actually Dog Water, and that was a terrible movie. Still don't watch that movie.
Blumhouse is sort of a hit or miss studio for a lot of people. I'm sort of on that end of I'm not the biggest fan of a lot of Blumhouse horror movies, but I also never say no to them. Yeah.
And this one,
it's okay.
It's okay. It's good.
Okay.
It's good. I would define it as good.
It's about as like defining like the word good as you could possibly get.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, the first thing that I personally noticed about it that I loved was it looked terribly amazing. Like, it looked awesome for no reason at all.
There were so many points during the movie, and by the way, we watched this on Peacock and not in theaters, so you might have a different experience in theaters, but watching it on Peacock, we were really able to see a lot of these really cool shots that just looked so good, and I am not familiar with the cinematographer of this movie at all, but they did fantastic. This movie looked great. The lighting was great, and I really hope that the cinematographer of this movie does get a lot of opportunities in the future, because like I said, me and Joey were looking through this movie. There were points where sometimes we would rewind just to look at that shot and see how exactly they lit it, how exactly they shot it, and that was just such a surprising thing because you wouldn't expect like a Five Nights at Freddy's movie to be well shot. Not that that's a dig at the property, but
no, but it was almost a bonus.
Yeah, it's a children's video game.
Yeah.
So they did really well. And on the note of children's video game, it's a PG-13 movie. So a lot of things are going to be toned down, and that's something that for a lot of people was a big concern. For me, I kind of expected it because like I said, it's for kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it has a huge children's demographic, and so if you were to make the movie R-rated, you cut out a lot of the audience from watching the movie.
And they could have made it gory, but they didn't deprive you of any cool kills or anything by any means.
I do want to say that the story itself was interesting to follow. We'll talk a little bit about that more in the spoiler section because they don't show a ton of it in the previews or marketing. But I'll say that it started off pretty strong, and at a certain point, I think is when it started to sort of take a nosedive, and it slowly just started becoming like, okay, I don't really like the direction they're going personally.
But it was very well acted, and all of the characters were very well developed, except for one. Yeah. and we'll get into more of that later. But it was oddly well executed.
Yeah,
that's the point of what I'm trying to get at. Is they did a good job not only on the cinematography, but the character development. And I thought the screenwriting was very, very well done. Like I wouldn't object to anything that the characters did for the most part.
I'll disagree with you there on the script. I thought that it was pretty weak, but I do agree that the characters made, for the most part, they made choices that I think were perfectly in line with how they could have acted in those scenarios. And I think specifically Josh Hutcherson as Mike in this movie was really natural.
Yeah.
He was really good. He was a really, human character, which for a character like Mike in this movie, he's ripe with the opportunity to do a lot of moping. He bottles up a lot of his emotion and instead delivers a very quiet performance that he does a lot of subtle things with his performance, which is impressive for this movie. One thing I do want to talk about before we get into spoilers is the suits. They look great.
Yes.
They looked fantastic.
Yes, I've heard some debate as if they're partially CGI or not, but we know for a fact they're made by Jim Henson Company. They were incredibly well executed. There were so many shots where they looked amazing, and Foxy in particular, he was my favorite. Like they made so much of his lighting look so good. Yeah, so whoever did the lighting for this had a thing for edge lighting.
Yes.
And on almost every time they showed the animatronics, they had some sort of edge lighting going on, and it was incredible.
So before we get into spoilers, I do want us to give our scores so that you guys can click off if you don't want to listen to spoilers. So I'll go ahead and start off with my score. So Five Nights at Freddy's was a really good time, and there were some things I didn't agree with on a story perspective, but for the most part, the characters were interesting enough to follow along. The animatronics looked great. The kills, for what little there are in the movie, and we'll talk about that a little more, were very interesting, very unique. Mm-hmm. And just on a filmmaking perspective, it was shot really well. I'm going to have to give this score a 6 out of 10, which isn't terrible. I would still recommend you watch this movie, especially if you like the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, because I think you'll get a lot more out of this.
So, out of 10 for me, and when I go to rate movies, one of the things that I look at for in movies is the rewatchability of it. Because for me, like, if a movie is good, it's going to make me want to rewatch it from the get-go. Like Oppenheimer, I did not mind rewatching it 3 times because it was worth that.
Yeah.
So that's like a peak example of what I'm talking about. For this, it was interesting because they did a lot of things so well, it made it hard to dislike.
Yeah.
But the things that I disliked so much, it brought it down so much. I don't know, I think it was fun, and I think it's going to end up getting a bad rap in the long run, so I would stick it with a slightly higher score of a 7 out of 10.
But yeah, those are our scores. So now we're going to move on to spoilers.
Okay, what's the first thing you hated the most? The first thing you hated the most.
They did this interesting thing with the lore in this movie, and I'm not, super invested into the Five Nights at Freddy's lore. I'm not like a historian. But something that they do that was interesting at first was they, halfway through the movie, made the animatronics, like they revealed them that they were good. Like they were kids. And that's something that is actually in, if I'm remembering correctly, Five Nights at Freddy's lore, that the kids are in the suits. And I really like the approach that the animatronics were actually pretty chill. However, it was halfway through the movie.
Yes.
We were on night 3, and nothing has happened. And it felt really strange and unwarranted, and I just didn't agree with that approach. And for the rest of the movie, there were not a lot of stakes, It didn't feel like there was a lot of stakes.
It slowed down.
Yeah, there's a scene where the animatronics are building a fort with Josh Hutcherson and his sister, and I thought it was really sweet. I was like, man, this is so cute.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, this is a horror movie.
That kind of touches on what I was missing from the movie, and the animatronics were so good and so well executed that I just wanted more from them. Willy's Wonderland is also a movie that is inspired by the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise. What I think a lot of people took away from that one and that they wanted to see in this one was the violence in it. I think a lot of people saw the ploy of a Five Nights at Freddy's horror movie, and they're going into it expecting something of the same vein, but as me and Nate discussed, it's not even really a horror movie. It left me wanting more.
Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest things for me.
I was keeping track of the nights because it's Five Nights at Freddy's. And night 1 doesn't last that long. Night 2 doesn't last that long. Night 3 is when we get that cool little, sequence of them building the fort, and then it ends. Night 4, pretty short. Night 5 is the last 20 minutes of the movie. Spliced between this is this family drama, which is interesting, but at the same time, I didn't think was very well developed.
And the way they tied it in at the ends felt loose.
By the way, guys, Matthew Lillard is Springtrap. He's William Afton.
Yeah.
So he's not in this movie, at all.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really weird.
He, what would you say, 5 minutes of screen time?
5 minutes. He was in the very beginning to hire Mike, and then at the very end to be Springtrap, because for some reason they felt the need to introduce him right at the end and introduce a lot of things all at once, and then he dies, and that's it. It was really bizarre, and I didn't think that it was a very strong move on their end. I would have liked to see, if you're going to make the animatronics good, why not have Springtrap, egging them on or something?
They could have made him such a more interesting character.
Yeah, and especially because of the fact that they got Matthew Lillard, who
I
love Matthew Lillard.
I hate to say it, but they wasted him.
Yeah.
They wasted Matthew Lillard.
Yeah.
I hate to say it. And that was part of what irked me so bad. But the other thing that irked me was the cop. Apparently Vanessa is a character in the games, but this is not the same Vanessa.
This is not the same. If I'm remembering correctly, Vanessa's just in Security Breach, which is set in the future.
Oh yeah, that's different.
I am not 100%. Don't quote me on that, guys.
Yeah, she did nothing but give vague comments the entire time she was on screen. When she does info dump to Josh Hutcherson, it's like the most pointless info dump because by that time you already have half the pieces together, so it's not a big reveal. And she makes this comment, and me and you both at the same time were like, "No, you didn't."
Yeah,
because she makes this comment where she's like, "I tried to warn you," and she did not. She did the exact opposite. Yeah. She in fact made it as vague as possible and gave him no warnings.
Yeah. By the end of the movie, it's sort of that problem of the third act where they just start throwing things at the viewer and start introducing things that should have been more developed. And this movie's not that long. It's, I think, less than 2 hours. And I think if they expanded on these things a little bit more, we could have gotten a better movie. Before we wrap this up, I do want to talk about 2 things that are spoilers that I thought were really cool. One of them being we caught 2 cameos in this movie.
Oh, we didn't even talk about it.
Matt Pat was in the movie.
You called that Matt Pat was in it.
Matt Pat was gonna be in
the
movie.
That was a crazy call.
Dude, Corey Kenshin was in the movie as well, who you're not familiar with.
No, I did not know who that was at first.
I had to do a double take when I saw him on the screen. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, who?
Interesting.
Yes. So Corey Kenshin is a taxi driver.
Yeah.
And Freddy gets into the taxi. And Corey Kenshin adjusts the rear view mirror and sees him and freaks the fuck out.
And Matt Pat says something. That's just a theory.
Yeah, he says lunch is the most important meal of the day, but that's just a theory.
It doesn't get any better than that.
That was perfect. I couldn't have asked for anything more.
The other thing that I did want to talk about is that, man, I think they announced that we're getting a trilogy. Don't quote me on that, but they are definitely setting up a lot of stuff.
They did set up a lot of open holes.
There's a lot of,
In fact, nobody died.
Yeah, nobody important died.
Nobody important
There's
died.
There's not a lot of kills. The kill count, the dead meat kill count for this movie?
Low.
Low. Very low.
Yeah.
People die at the beginning, and that's it.
I think it's 4.
Yeah, 4. There's 5 technically.
Oh, because the first guy.
Yeah.
And
there might be a couple more. They do a lot of setting up, for the future. It's implied that they're gonna revisit Freddy Fazbear's Pizza at some point at the end. William Afton as Springtrap is left in the closet, which
still alive.
Yeah, it's something that's in the games. So that they're definitely setting up something. And I'm interested to see if this movie does get a sequel. They're releasing it on Peacock.
Straight to Peacock.
Yeah, straight to Peacock.
We saw the movie the night of release on Peacock.
And it's also getting pretty bad reviews from critics. It has a pretty low score on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
I'll be following this movie very closely to see where exactly it goes, because I don't think that you should kill this franchise just yet.
No, I thought it was so fun. I think if you make it a rated R movie on the next one, and you develop the Springtrap character a little bit more, it would take away a lot of the bad parts for me. Yeah.
A little bit of darkness among the comedy, because this movie is pretty funny. A little bit of darkness to go along with that will go a long way for this. And I really hope that the filmmakers don't give up. I really hope that Blumhouse doesn't give up on this, because there's still so much potential. I mean, there's 1 billion Five Nights at Freddy's games.
Yeah, they have enough to pull from.
And the lore is expansive.
Yeah.
The lore is so expansive. So there's so much to go off of.
Mm-hmm.
So to the filmmakers, if you guys are watching this, keep going.
Keep it up.
Keep it up. All right, guys. So, that was our review of Five Nights at Freddy's. What did you guys think? Leave a comment down below. Leave a thumbs up if you like it. If you don't,
some like it.
Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.